Hi guys, let's discuss commingling and family law. What does it mean? Why we need to know about commingling? For example, you're in a situation where you got married, you inherited money, you put it into your account that you use for living expenses, putting your salary into that account, and later that money was used during the marriage to purchase a home. Well, here's the ground rule. Anything you have before marriage in that account is your separate property money. If it's untouched, if you didn't put any earned salary money into that account, it's not commingled. So it's 100% yours if you can trace, meaning you can show every bank statement that that account was untouched. Now, let's say this is not the usual case, because what happens is you have this account, let's say you have $100,000 in your name, and then you start putting salary and spend that money. And then let's say you inherit money, so you put extra separate property money into that account, and it's all commingled. It's mixed, meaning separate money is mixed with community money. There's a big misconception when people think that if this bank account is in my name and I earn the money and put my salary into my account, it's separate property account. This is not a legal advice. However, general information, generally speaking, it's commingled because it doesn't matter whose name is on the account. What matters is the source of money. This is your book. I created this book to help you understand the divorce process. You can buy it on Amazon in all formats, including audio format. Community Property Law, Family Code Section 760 says, everything is presumed to be community unless you can trace it. So then you are the one who has separate property money, the burden of proof to trace it. There's a different presumption, title presumption. That has nothing to do with this. The title presumption still exists. So if, let's say, someone is on the title of a home, it's presumed to be separate property of that person unless you can prove that you have the right of reimbursement by putting your separate property money into down payment of that home, and you can get 2640 Family Code Section reimbursement of your separate property money back. What are the rules to trace the money? There are three methods. Number one, it's called direct tracing method, based on a case called MIX, M-I-X, from 1975. There are three things required. Number one, you have to have separate property in the account. Number two, the money should remain at the time when you acquire something. And number three, the intent should be that separate property money is intended to buy this particular item, property. Let's break it down. For example, you have $100 in your bank account, and then you inherit or you get a gift from your parents in the amount of $100,000, and then you would like to purchase real estate that costs $100,000, and you have $100,000 and $100 in the account. So you decide with your spouse that this $100,000 that was there, separate property money, goes into escrow to purchase separate property. That means you can directly trace it, assuming you keep all the bank records to show it was $100 to begin with, and then you have to keep all consecutive bank statements ready, because banks, they don't keep bank records more than 7 years. Supposedly, sometimes they do, but most of the time they don't. So you gotta keep the records, and I suggest not to keep it in the boxes, because a lot of times when people go through divorce, they steal each other's boxes and it becomes a big problem. So you have to store it, you have to scan it, you have to store it in many places. So if your computer gets stolen, if the box disappears for whatever reason, you have it. All right, so the first method was direct. The second method, called exhaustion method or family spending method, which means if you had community property money in an account and then you inherited $100,000, in our example you had $100 and then you inherited $100,000, then it's assumed when you spend the money on family expenses that community money goes out first. So until community is exhausted, so let's say there is only $50,000 left after you commingled, then separate property is remaining. And if you use that separate property to purchase a home or a car or whatever that is, you can trace it back to you, and which means you can get reimbursed 100% for your separate property. But you have to trace it. So again, you have to keep all the records. You have to show how much was spent. And then there was this case called CIPRARI, 2019, where Court of Appeal said, we're going to use mixed method. It's not just one method. It's not just another method. Because in that case, it was a 20-year marriage. Husband traced 20 years of transaction worth 17,000 entries in 23 accounts, and it was impossible to use just one method. So the court used the logical conclusion of both methods, including testimonies, including evidence to make sense whether husband can trace it or not. So we have direct tracing, exhaustion tracing, mixed tracing, but what are the key takeaways? The key takeaways from this is that A, you gotta keep your records. For example, if you really want to be a clean and clear spend, do not mix the money. So when you get married, open a new bank account, or if you have already a bank account, don't use that bank account to put your salary into it. So if you want your salary, which is community money, to be community, to stay community, not commingle it, then open a fresh bank account, either joint or your own, or both, and put that salary and bonuses into these two accounts, and keep that separate bank account separate, meaning do not mix both salary and separate money. If you receive inheritance and you still have that separate bank account, make sure that separate is separate, so you can put the inheritance into that account, separate account. Very important. Keep all the bank records consecutively. I keep repeating that because it's very important to understand that the presumption is whatever money you have is community unless you prove it's separate. So you have the burden of proof to show that this money, separate property money, was there at the time when it was deposited and it wasn't spent. So you have to prove and show throughout the banks and throughout the bank statements and throughout the years that it wasn't spent. I hope that was helpful, and I will see you in my next consultation. Bye!